if work's not getting done for other reasons. Outsourcing is the solution because the systems are working well, the teams, and you want to grow. And you've got good process, you've got good workflow in place. But if you don't have those down pat, then it's just going to be moving that headache or moving that blockage further down the line, or actually outsourcing that headache, and then you got someone else to yell at. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the latest episode of Strategy and the Virtual Controller, where I, Damien Greathead, and my co-host Penny Breslin, we talk all things client accounting technology, client accounting services, client accounting and advisory services, or CAS, workflow, et cetera. Penny, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. So, Penny, it's July. Normally in the accounting world, the summer holidays means a serious slowdown for accounting firms. But as we've discussed on this episode, on this podcast many times, there is no such thing as a slow period anymore. There's no such thing as busy season. It seems to be always busy season. And I guess today's episode, we're really going to focus and drill down on outsourcing, and would love to know, normally the inbound queries on outsourcing sort of come as we head into tax season. But what are you seeing in terms of demand for outsourcing services for tax, accounting, et cetera?
Couple of things that are an indication that it's very high. Growing concern, always post job postings. More and more of them are posted as remote workers. The last two conferences I've gone to have had more outsourcing booths and more staffing booths than I've ever seen at a given show. Almost like, especially with one show where there were probably only, maybe 50 vendors. It was a smaller show, that 25% were that, staffing and outsourcing. So, and obviously, and everybody talks about it, the staffing shortage and how people don't want to go into, and I was looking at some of the prices or the salaries. 3, 4, 5 years experience, tax preparer, UltraTax, QuickBooks Online, Microsoft certified, all this stuff that they wanted, and the starting wage was $70,000. My son has a good job. He's an apprentice flight mechanic. He makes more than that, and he is a first-year apprentice flight mechanic, and he gets all the same benefits that they're offering.
Yep.
So I'm like going. And his job is not stressful at all. He loves it. I mean, he's happier than a pig in shit working there. He loves it. And so and his starting wage was $10,000 more than what that one particular place was asking. A comment.
Yeah, so I agree with that. And particularly in smaller firms, first and foremost, finding quality people is difficult, but then also being able to pay competitive salaries is incredibly difficult. Certainly, if you look at competing with the larger firms, competing with private accounting in tech firms, for example, it's a real challenge. And also, I think what's happening as well is that the client demand is growing. I think there was a fear that AI and compliance and sort of the tax would go away, or technology would be doing that. But actually what we're seeing is the client demand, whether it's client accounting services, bookkeeping services, tax planning, tax and compliance. I actually think the client demand has increased significantly more than what, say, technology has been able to do from the machine learning and AI standpoint. I think client demand is way up, in addition to what's happening from a staffing perspective.
Oh, without a doubt. And part of that is because of the shrinkage in the number of people willing to do the work. Part of it is, I think that as a educated years ago, there was a change in how we educate children from the get-go on teamwork. And I think that, and then if you add in the information age, you've got young entrepreneurs and meeting millennial entrepreneurs and some boomers who are well aware that their job is to run their business, and it's to their benefit to have somebody who will do this accounting, bookkeeping, financial advisory for them. Whereas even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you'd often hear people say, well, I can't really afford an accountant. Now it's like, I can't afford not to have one.
Yeah.
And the accountants are either giving in with bookkeeping and accounting comes a tax return if it's a business. And even if it's an individual who has some type of net worth that they need to manage outside of just balancing a checkbook. And that's not to sound pejorative, but there are things that happen in people's lives that there are other streams of income that come in, and you need advice and help with that. And so there's I think the demand is up. You're right, but also there has to be an understanding of the value of what that demand is. You have to present a value to your clients, and you all have to state what you can do for them and that you can be valuable to them and that you're worthwhile. I was talking to a client of mine that I do consulting work for, and he's like, it's a dog eat dog world out there. Everybody's like undercutting me on pricing. And I said, well, what is it that you say you do? Well, we tell them we do bookkeeping and tax. They go, excuse me, define that a little bit better, could you?
Every man and every and their
Everybody
dog
can,
is
you know
doing
what?
tax.
Everybody can do bookkeeping and tax. You can get bots to do a lot of it. So why would I hire you? Because of your brains. Because I told him, I said, look, you have a really good core of clients that you work with that are in a specific industry, and you do a damn good job for them. Stop trying to market to the whole damn town. Go out and market to that industry.
Because I would say like your Paget Business Services and your H&R Block, they're doing a very good job at advertising and promoting exactly what they do. And the end customer, for example, is now starting to compare you to other business entities or business units that are just very clear in what they're providing, what they do, what they don't do. And if you believe you to be a step up or a couple of steps up from an H&R Block, for example, you've got to be clear as to why and what is it that you're bringing to the table. So take a look at some of those competitors out there that are undercutting you, and how are you differentiating yourself? Because again, we've spoken about this many times before, that whether it's your website, whether it's your office, or whether it's how you talk about the services that you provide, the small business owner, they don't know the difference between your accounting firm and H&R Block, or your accounting firm and ABC accounting firm down the road. So you've got to be very clear as to the value that you're bringing to the table. Otherwise, you will be getting constantly undercut. And as we've seen, a lot of accounting firms, they don't reduce the scope of what they do. They reduce the price of what they do. And that just gets into this downward spiral of stress and probably missed expectations across the board.
Well, and it's also being a loss leader. And I think that a professional service firm doesn't need to do loss leading. And if you don't, do you know what I mean by that, loss leading?
Yeah.
So it just,
well, I think the loss leader, a lot of people thought tax was the loss leader for a long time and used to go very cheap on tax, knowing that they'd be able to pick up tax planning, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you're right. You don't need to put the chocolates at the front of the counter or whatever, or the CDs in the music store to get people in, because if you're very clear with what you do and how you can actually help, then there shouldn't be a need for that loss leader.
And to tell you the truth, there's a lot of work that can be done with each individual business that you bring in. I mean, I do have direct businesses I deal with so that I understand what an accountant has to deal with. And they come in at a low price range, some of them. And part of that was because it was just somebody would find out that I knew how to do QuickBooks or Xero or something, and I would get the call. But okay, we'll clean it up, or we'll do this little thing for whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, could you do this more? Well, yeah, well, that's going to cost you more. And then more, and then that's going to cost you more. And then, okay, well, that's going to cost you more. Okay, well, and then you reach a point where mostly I decide, Okay, now I'm going to go find you somebody else to do the work because you have too much heavy lifting.
Find your real accountant. Well, okay,
Well,
so let's
plus
sort
I've
of
learned
jump
what I
on.
can. I've learned what I can from you, so I'm going to give you to somebody else.
Yep. Yeah,
But
I was
some
just
of them
going to
are
say in
up
terms
there.
of our,
Some of them are up there on what
yeah,
they're willing
sorry,
to pay
there's
us.
a bit of a delay there.
Yeah.
In terms of outsourcing, we were sort of talking about, okay, demand's on the up because trying to find people is very difficult. The actual client demand and what clients are looking for is growing quickly. So obviously, as you said, a lot of vendors that are staffing agencies, outsourcing agencies. So what are you seeing, Penny, in terms of your inbound queries? Do people need to outsource? Is that the solution for every firm that they need to outsource, or
Oh,
what should a firm be thinking about if they can't find people, client demand is up, but is outsourcing right for them? What should they be thinking about?
well, if you're going to hire somebody remotely one-on-one and they're an employee, it's one thing. I think that that is a much easier lift than it was pre-2020, because people understand how remote works. Because I see more and more firms adopting good, decent workflows that where they can manage their employee who sits in one location and it's just one employee and they're within the continental United States. That is one
Mhm.
way of doing remote. And sometimes they're not in within the continental United States, but they're an American citizen and they've lived here or grew up here and maybe they're working wherever.
Yep.
Nomads. See a lot of those. But when it comes to somebody calling me and I start asking questions like, why is it that you think you need to outsource? That always throws them for a loop. It's like, what do you mean? Are you trying to not sell me? And I'm going, yeah, I am. Frankly, I am. Because if what you
I was
have, if
told
the
at the last
reason,
conference that I went to.
well, if the reason you want to outsource is because stuff isn't getting done, explain to me why things aren't getting done. Because if things aren't getting done because you just don't have anybody, or you are at max capacity and everything's going well and you want to take on new clients, then chances are you probably need to outsource. But let's take a look at why work is not getting done first. And and I would say at least 30% of the people that I talk to, it's like, okay, here, these are things I think you should do first.
Hmm.
And then if you still feel like you need help because you actually got what you've got under control, and then call me back. And chances are they've called another outsourcer by then and they've gone there because that outsourcer will tell them, sure, we'll take it. But
Yeah.
the thing is, I don't want your headache to become my headache. And we manage quite a few clients for our accounting firms. So,
Hmm.
and we were having this discussion just the other day because it's funny, but 85% of our bookkeeping and accounting companies that outsource to us have a strict close date that we have to hit. And so, say they have 30 clients that they've given one of our staff members to work on. All 30 clients are closed on the same day. You can tell me where the flipping logic is on that? Because I can guarantee you, if you're closing on the 10th, you're not calling that client up on the 11th and saying, hey, let's talk about your business.
Mm.
No, you can just not. So why are you holding not only our internal people, but our people to a 10th close date? And then when half of them don't get closed on the 10th, why are you calling and saying, hey, you're not doing your work? Did you look at the workflow? Because those half that aren't closed are clients that are not responding and giving the information that is required to do the close you want. So follow the breadcrumb trail backwards and take a look at the client. And then take a look at the clients that are doing closing on time and how often they close on time. Because I know these workflows will do it for you. They'll give you the analytics on how good of a
Mm.
client that is. And how much time are you spending calling me, having a Zoom meeting, discussing the ones that didn't close when you go, oh, yeah, we don't have the information. So that took
So
an hour and
go
a
so
half.
go so going back to what's stopping you from getting the work done in this instance, it's not necessarily well, it's probably one of the first five steps of the workflow, getting the information off the client. And
So
if you
maybe
can't get that
your
information off the
internal team could work better
yeah,
if you organize the first five steps better. Another thing that was like, are you breaking the steps down? Are you defining exactly what it is that that work needs to be, that scope of the work? Are you even aware? And I'm sorry, because some people that call me, it's like, are you even aware of what frustrations your internal employees are dealing with?
if you
And
don't
that
solve
sounds
them, then
so
yeah, if you
obviously
don't
I'm
solve
not a
them,
really
then
good salesperson.
but that's the thing. Like if you don't solve those, if you don't solve what's frustrating your internal team, your external team, your outsourcing team, for all intents and purposes, is an extension of that team. So if it's not solved, shit's just gonna roll downhill, isn't it?
Yes, it does. And it rolls all down to Chennai. I mean, it's just, and it's kind of like, I would love to work with you. In fact, I will work with you on getting that part of it organized. And that's fine. And you may find you don't need outsourcing, or you may be
I
much
hope
more
so.
aware of what it is you do need to outsource. Maybe you can put technology as a piece in there. There's a lot of options for
I would
technology.
say you're gonna have to, and I think a lot of people actually put technology in, and again, but they don't tell the clients, or they don't talk to the clients, or they don't train the clients. So I would
Tell
probably
your
say again,
internal
you
staff.
have to talk to your client. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
you have to talk to your clients. You have to have champions.
it's this is you were talking earlier when we started about how there is no just busy season anymore. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's July and August, and it is somewhat slow comparatively. I mean, there were times when years
Yeah,
ago, everybody could just go away on August, right? It's like nothing's going to happen.
yeah.
But that's not the case now. But it is slower than it was a month ago. So it's a good time for, I think, everybody to look and take that deep dive into where are the blocks? Are
Mm,
they the clients? Are they our process? Are they our
team.
technology? I mean,
Yeah.
some firms come to us and it's like, oh my God, you're still using that?
Or I've spoken to a lot of firms, and it's a case of they've got every single app under the sun all connected in, and they got one client on this and one client on that and another client that likes to use this, and they pride themselves on the technology that they're using, but it's not flowing, it's not integrated, it's not a seamless experience because it's so hodgepodge, if you will, and piecemeal, that there's no systemization or standardization of all of these tools. They've got every certification under the sun, but it's not working in the way that it's meant to be because maybe they've just overcomplicated it.
Oh, accountants overcomplicating things. And I'll tell you what, because we have to manage so many tech stacks, we break our teams into tech stacks because I
Yeah.
can't expect some. If I give somebody way too many apps, that's not fair. It's not fair.
No.
And it's,
Mm.
we like, so when somebody comes to us and I'll go, the first thing I'll do, especially if it's bookkeeping, if it's tax, that's pretty well defined. It has been since 1927 is when we started doing tax returns here in the United States. Is that it? Was that the year that they did the income tax? I believe. I can't remember. Anyways, well, when it comes to the bookkeeping, everybody, every single firm, every single bookkeeping company, every single CPA, every single accounting business does it different. And I don't mean that the accounting part is different. It's their process. It's their communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's their
Yeah.
and their tech stacks. They may use the same technology, but they'll use it in a different order of operations, which sometimes I absolutely disagree with. But anyways, So we have to learn that. And frankly, we're sometimes teaching the internal person over on the US side, because they've hired somebody who's not aware of it. You go out and you hire a new employee in the US. Do you think that they walk in on day one and can get right to work immediately? Does that happen anywhere? Except unless you're maybe a scientist and they put you in a room and you're doing theoretical research? No, but we're expected to do that. There is a learning curve. And that learning curve isn't on how to do accounting. The learning curve is, how do you approach getting this job done? That's the learning curve. And so, do your internal people understand it? Are they using the technology stack? Have you communicated to the client the importance of how this technology stack that you're purchased for them, how it is benefiting them to utilize it? Have you done all of that first? Then see, okay, where is it that we need help? And oftentimes where you need help is somebody who's just doing that, making sure that the client and the account manager are able to get what they need at the moment they need it.
We've spoken about that many, many times, of having that person that's the client service manager, not the accountant, not the bookkeeper, because very different roles, very different personalities, very different skill sets. But we do see that a lot, where within an accounting firm, the bookkeeper is also the client service manager, also the IT person, also this, that, and the other. And basically you're unable to get the work done because that person is wearing too many hats, so to speak, versus actually just having seen it in many firms where you've got your client services manager, and they're responsible for following up with clients, whether it's waiting on documents, password resets, billing issues, or anything along those lines. That's the client service manager. It's not the accounting team. So again, do you need to outsource, or do you need to actually reallocate the work to the right parts of the team? That's again that important question of why is what getting done. Yeah. We've spoken about that many times.
And then find out which clients are playing along with it. Because if they're not in the sandbox with you, playing on nicely, how much energy are you putting into it?
But also back to that point on your next hire, again, we've spoken about this before, might not actually be an accountant. It might be an administrative person, a process person. And again, why isn't the work getting done? What are the bottlenecks? That person might be easy to hire, and that might be what the office needs, versus an outsourcing solution, for example, or something else.
And this is something that, again, look at most of the stuff that we talk about is because I've made these mistakes, or I am fixing these mistakes in my business. That's why I have direct business owners that I deal with, so I understand what the blocks can be for an accountant or a bookkeeper, and literally had to lower the hammer down on this, because the other day, one of the team leaders, she had a problem with, and it had nothing to do with what happened with Microsoft. That one client who everybody, did you get bumped off? Did you get bumped off? Yeah. That was just one client, but they couldn't. They were in the middle of their workday, and their access to the managed server went down. And there were 3 people that worked for this particular company. We've worked with them for a long time. I mean, they hustled out with work, and they have 8 hours of solid work, and it is really well budgeted. It's really well done. When at 4:00 in the morning, my time, my phone pinged, and it's like, how long have you been down? Well, we've been down so far for a half an hour. So that's 3 people. That's an hour and a half. Okay. And you know what the protocol is, right? Well, yeah, but I was just wondering, since we can't log into the server, we can't do what the client said. The client said we're supposed to ask the IT time, because the IT support on this side, because they have 24/7 support. Because they needed support for us in the middle of the night. This happened. I go, okay. all right, so you can't get into the email ID under this client's domain to ask their IT support. Yeah. And I go, are you fucking stupid? You have an email ID under our domain. Oh, could I use that? All right, wait a minute. Step aside. Go get the operations. And so he gets in the Zoom meeting. I went, where are you? He goes, oh, I was at lunch. And I went, okay, fine. Go take care of this. And of course, in 2 seconds after he took care of, I mean, the managed service provider, as soon as they knew what was happening, they fixed it within minutes. But it's like, I told the operations manager, I said, look, they are accountant. They're managing 8 hours each of them a day of work, and they have a solid amount of work to do. And they are really damn good at their accounting job. But you know what? I have a sister that is brilliant. She is absolutely, I have a friend who is on the spectrum who is amazing. He's so intelligent. It's like talking to him is like talking to Sheldon on the Big Bang Theory. Talking to my sister about what she does is like talking to Sheldon on the Big Bang Theory. But both of those people constantly call me about how to do things that open the closet door, turn the light on, maybe you can walk out of it. It's kind of commonsensical things that I didn't hire those ladies to do technology fixes. It's your job to make sure. And you need to reiterate that to them all the time because they will become a deer in a headlight. And that's exactly what they did.
So
well, the client told us to do it this way.
So where was the breakdown? They didn't review the operations manual, or the operations manager was out to lunch?
They just remembered the conversation they had where the client said, if you have a technology problem, email our IT department, here's the email. And they had that process. And they're going, well, we can't get into the server where our email is accessible. They weren't thinking beyond this. And a lot of that comes from the fact that we work in an outsourcing environment and they do have blinders on. We're very controlled by our clients, and they just couldn't imagine that, well, we can't step outside what the client told us to do. And typically the operations manager, he's out on that floor checking for this kind of stuff because we have technical issues constantly. So he's always out there checking. Yeah. He just happened to be out and gone for lunch. And so it didn't register that they can do anything. And 1 hour and a half went by. And when you think about it, that's 3 people. They made up the time, but it's just an indication that I said, look, your job is to do accounting, and his job yes, and it is a male. His job is to make sure that you have the blocks removed so that you can do your job, right? To the best of your ability and to what you've been given to work on. With this particular client, we don't have any of the typical blocks of where is it? It's always there for us because they're on their side. They have a Beth. In fact, her name is Beth. And so that work comes in, it's constant, it's always flowing. There's very little that ever gets blocked and held up because they've got all their systems in place. They work on it. In fact, this particular client had just come back from a week off where she took her whole team and they sat down and they left the office, they closed the office down, and they talked about their processes and what went well and what didn't go well and where they need to improve. So they've been working with us for many, many years. And there's very little slow time. So this one, it was just a matter of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they were in accounting mode and it just stopped them. Well, they're very intelligent people.
So what's your lesson for the listeners then? Is it that
look at where your blocks are before you do anything, before you start saying, why do I need another person? And some people need another person. But are you optimizing the technology and the systems that you have? in place? And is everybody in your company, whether it's internal in your office or remote within the US, are they aware of what those systems are? And are they following them? This is another place where I've seen mistakes where we've made, where, you know, somebody will say, well, the team leader says they're doing it. And I'll go, have you checked? Because based on what I'm hearing for the last couple of weeks, I don't think that they're doing it. And based on the notes that I've read, I don't see them mentioning the problems the client is calling me about. So I don't think they're being completely honest with you. Perhaps the question has to be reworded. So are you asking the right questions? And if you're not getting a response, reword the question. When you're teaching somebody in a classroom or something and you ask a student a question, sometimes you'll get a look like, and you think, well, they don't know. No, we ask the question a different way. And you might get a response now. And it's just a matter of the way you posed the question. You didn't get the answer you needed. The answer is there. You just need to repose the question a different way. But just check before you jump to conclusions that, hey, I need to outsource. Check to see what's happening here. Bigger accounting companies have their own outsourced divisions. I know because they surround us. And some of their people interview with us. And those people that come from those bigger companies, they have specific skills, and it's just very specific, very, very specific. And those that come to work with us have to often be trained on things that they're like, wow, we never had to do this, or we never had to do that. And it's because they were in a bigger company where everything was just very systematic. And that particular accounting firm could own the whole kit and caboodle, the workflow, the process,
end to end,
the systems. And so they can really rock with it. But then you pull that very intelligent, I've been working there for 4 years, I know how to do this person out of that system and put them into something else. And there's a whole lot of retraining that has to go on. So
so Penny,
am I getting off track here? I don't know.
Well, no. It's sort of interesting. I was sort of thinking that you and your partners in Chennai, India, you run an outsourcing company, and actually that this whole conversation has been, you might not actually need to outsource. So it's sort of, I appreciate you're not a very good marketing person, but it's just been sort of an interesting conversation around this idea that actually before you go down the outsourcing path, actually just take a look at what's happening in the business, talk to your team, and really try and understand why the work's not getting done. I thought that was sort of interesting around the operations manager. You've got your accountants to do the accounting. You've got the operations man, the first man to join the team, whose responsibility is the operations and that aspect of things, thereby freeing up the accountants to do or to be able to focus more specifically on what their primary role is.
And it's been difficult. And it's one of the reasons why I ended up hiring a male for this, because whenever we've hired, and he actually tried this on me the other day, whenever we've hired somebody before, it's always been a female to do this. And the accountants who are actually doing the work, they don't give up that information. They assume that they have to take care of this too. She wasn't being forceful. And we've gone to 4 or 5, and a couple of them were really, he was excellent at it. It's like, should we get her back? But no, she's got several kids now, and she's not going to go back to work. And that's fine. That's fine. But she was good. We didn't have the problems with her. Now, what we did was we hired a man because something, and they will give it up to him. But I had to tell my partners, you need to let go. Your best self is when you're out there teaching these women. Don't sit down and do it for them. Teach them.
Yeah.
When you're teaching them, and they make notes every day on what they had to specifically say to somebody. And I look at that stuff and I go, God, I would not. Oh my God, that's brilliant. Now teach it to everybody. And then the other day he said, well, I thought maybe I should start learning some accounting. I went, no.
No.
Don't you dare. And my partners and he we're all in a Zoom call together. And I said, you two ladies, you get back out there on the floor and you be your best selves. This is what you're good at. This is what made this company grow, was when you're out there doing that. When you're in here trying to do what he's doing, we fail.
Yeah.
Get out of it. Go back out there. And I looked at him and I said, and don't you ever try to do what they do. Don't. I need you doing this. If you're doing what they're doing, then I have to go find somebody else to do what you do.
Do what you do. And I think then
job.
also
you remove our blocks. He removes our blocks.
And I think just as you've got an internal operations person, again, going back to that idea of where are the blocks in your workflow, if the blocks are your clients not getting you the work on time, outsourcing isn't going to miraculously solve that issue, is it? So again, outsourcing isn't the solution if work's not getting done for other reasons. Outsourcing is the solution because the systems are working well, the teams, and you want to grow. And you've got good process, you've got good workflow in place. But if you don't have those down pat, then it's just going to be moving that headache or moving that blockage further down the line, or actually outsourcing that headache, and then you got someone else to yell at. But it's not actually going to solve the problem if you're not fixing it, if you're not fixing your workflow, if you're not training your clients or talking to your clients about what they need to send, when they need to send it, how to communicate with you, and by when, then the same problems are going to exist. And it's probably just going to be exacerbated because you've got time zones, you've got different teams, and yeah, it's before you outsource, make sure you're ready to outsource.
When you outsource, learn how to insource better.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And for those folks with teams, a lot of the answers of why the work's not getting done is going to be sitting with them. They're going to tell you who the problem clients are. They're going to tell you the problems with the technology. Get them to identify what needs to be fixed before we bring on an outsourcing partner.
Yeah, and then once you need, then you'll know where you need some. You'll know what you have to plug in that's missing if you have the system, but you have to go back and look at what you've got for a system. Remember that time back in 2013 when we did that workshop and I gave everybody a task? And these were all firm owners. These were all business owners of a firm, of a company that did accounting. That's what you had in that room. All 99 of them were either owners or partners or whatever. And my first task to give them in the workshop is, here's a blank Excel, and we printed out blank sheets with lines on it. Tell me what happens when a client walks through the door in your office. And we gave them 15 minutes. And there was nothing on any piece of paper.
Well, we had to ask the question a couple of different ways so that they could understand exactly what we were looking for. But I think that's an interesting one as well, because I think that lack of systemization, that lack of documentation, I've spoken to so many firms where they had a shit outsourcing experience, but actually on reflection, it was because they had shit processes, because they didn't have the standardization, the processes, the service level agreements with their clients, but they were definitely pushing the service level agreements with their suppliers. And so I think as they've become a little bit wiser and reflected on it, they realized they were the problem, not the outsourcing organization. And I think that's a really important lesson is, as Penny just said, before you outsource, make sure you're really good at what you do and you're really good at your processes, your documentation, and your standardization. Otherwise, you're just literally shoveling that problem down onto the next team, which I think is not setting anyone up for success. Penny, final thoughts for our listeners on whether or not they should be outsourcing.
Works. I know it works. I've been in a lot of firms where it does work. I've been in a lot of outsourcing companies. I know that we're successful and with a lot of our clients, but they have good process and procedures. They know exactly what they want, and they inspect what they expect, and they get a good result, regardless of cultural time zone differences.
Yeah.
But it's a good time now for anybody who does this type of business to look and revisit, even if you have good process and procedures, technology has changed. We're doing two big, huge changes on internal technology that we use. And I'm doing it at this time because I know it's the slowest time of the year for us. And we've gone through it and we're ready to press the button on August 1st on it. So we took all of July to go through it. And I've got 77 people that internally are going to use these two apps. And I have to make sure that they've got a complete understanding of who, what, when, and why we do this. And
Yeah.
but teaching them the technology part of it, oh, that's going to be done in 2 days. All the other stuff is what took long.
I've seen it. I've seen it transform. I've seen outsourcing transform firms, transform client relationships, and I've also seen firsthand the role Penny can play in firms, helping them get those processes, get them ready to outsource. So if you are looking for help on getting your own backyard in order, make sure you hit up Penny Breslin. You can find her on LinkedIn. You can find her at the website moneypennyllc.com as well, which will be able to help on those consulting services. If you're down in Australia, I'd be more than happy to connect you with people that are doing wonderful work in this space as well. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Damien Greathead. I think there's only one of me, but if you've got any questions about outsourcing providers, getting that backyard in order, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll give the book a plug as well, Penny. It's not just the numbers. That's a really great guide in terms of how to get your backyard in order. So over at CPA Trendlines, you can find the book that Penny and I wrote. It's just not the numbers. So Penny, always a pleasure talking with you. I think listeners today hopefully got some insights into what is one of the trending topics that I'm seeing in terms of seeing more and more articles around difficulty to find people, growing client demands, and the role that outsourcing can play. So I do hope that listeners have got one or two good ideas from today's episode.
Too, because you know what? It is worth it to take a look at your processes. It is worth it.
Absolutely.
You know what? I'll let you
Penny,
sleep better at night.
Yeah, very much so. Penny, always a pleasure. Look forward to catching you on our next episode. And until then, folks, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it, please like it, and please don't hesitate to reach out and tell us what you thought. Penny, we'll talk to you next time.
Good one, Damien. Bye-bye.